Okay, Orlando Wilson here. I want to talk to you quickly about the issues of, from a protection perspective, a close protection perspective, of picking people up at airports, picking people up in general. Now, if you look at my other videos, I tell people you have to be very careful when you're arriving at airports from a basic travel security perspective. Know how you're getting from the airport to your hotel, etc., etc., and be very wary of using taxis. In one of my books, Kidnap and Ransom, there's a story about a guy that was kidnapped at the airport in Caracas, which is a very dangerous airport, because he jumped into a taxi with somebody he didn't know. With taxis, you're jumping into cars with people you don't know. Could be a respectable driver, could be a serial murderer, connected to organized crime, etc. In a lot of places, I know in Eastern Europe in the old days, organized crime were big into taxis because it's a cash business. They used to bring in hard currency, and they're also good for laundering money. Taxi companies are good for laundering money. Anyway, that's another story. From the protection perspective, if we've got people coming into a location, my most worrisome time is the time that person lands to that time the person is with one of my guys. I'm not going to say girls because I tend to use guys. So, one of the main things that needs to be worked out beforehand is how the client is going to connect with one of my guys. I'm not into having people stood there with the sign with the client's name on it. And I've got stories about that as well. A very funny story, but I'm not sure if I've written about it. Maybe I'll talk about it in time. I'm not into that. If you're going to use a sign, use something which is obscure, that only the client knows. I've come out of airports and you see all the corporate signs there, and you see the executives hooking on these people with a corporate sign, and I don't think the drivers verify the identity of the people they're picking up, and the client and the corporate people, the executives, are not verifying who the drivers are. So anybody could be picking up anybody and going anywhere with anybody. What I suggest, use an obscure sign, or how we do it, don't use any signs. Before the client turns up, they exchange pictures. We have a picture of the client. My guy has a picture of the client. The client has the picture of the person that's picking them up, even down to what they're wearing, going to be wearing. We tend to meet the clients away from the main area where everybody exits. Meet them outside of a kiosk, meet them next to one of the shops, meet them at a coffee shop. Because that way there's not going to be anybody else at that location waiting to pick somebody up. As they walk out of immigration, there's how many taxi people, how many drivers, etc. If you're away from that area, there's going to be less chance of the person getting in the car with the wrong person. And it happens. What we also do in high-risk areas, and I recommend it these days, is most airports have free Wi-Fi. The client is on the phone with me. He messaged me via one of the messengers that yes, he's arrived. I'm talking to my guy that's picking him up. And in high-risk areas where could be any possible doubt, I get the client to send me a picture of the person he's getting in the car with. That way I can confirm that yes, this is my guy, etc. This reassures the client, but it also reassures me that we're not having any potential problems. You might think it's stupid and impossible for people to get in the wrong car with somebody. It happens. It happened to me. I was doing that, but it happened to somebody that got into the car that should have been picking me up when I was doing a course at one location in the Middle East, training course. Another instructor, my driver turned up early. Another instructor come down, jumped in the car, wasn't even working for the same company I was working for, and was whisked off to do a security course when he wasn't even there to do a security course. The driver was keen, and all white people look the same, right? So took this instructor and took him off to a location. People only realized what was going on when I was complaining that my driver didn't turn up, and they're like, well, your driver's picked you up and took you to the location. It's like, well, why am I still stood outside the hotel? Anyway, this is where, from a security perspective, a close protection management, a travel management perspective, we need to minimize anything that can go wrong. If there's a possibility of something going wrong, we need to minimize it, especially in the close protection business, because we're dealing with people's lives. If you're dealing with people with any potential threat, if you're dealing with a high worth individual, they turn up at a location, they jump into a taxi or jump into the wrong car and they disappear. Okay, the weight's on you. You could always say, well, we didn't meet him. Well, it's your fault you didn't meet him. You should have organized things properly. And this is a two-way system. The clients need to listen. The clients need to understand why you're putting these procedures in place, and it's for their security. It's to make sure they don't end up in trouble, they don't end up being kidnapped, they don't end up disappearing. So, a little video on picking people up from the airport. I hope it makes sense. Another thing I'll add on before I finish: if you're self-driving, if you're going and picking up a hire car, as you're leaving, most airports have limited roads in and out, right? So as you're leaving the airport, ensure once you get past the channeled roads, when you get out on the open roads, to do some counter surveillance drills in your car. And that's simply making sure you're not being followed. Pull over to the side of the road, see if anybody does the same, pull into a gas station, but check behind you. One trick used by criminals and private investigators, etc., is to put spotters in the airport. Once you identify the person that's coming in, the person your target, then you put a bike, a driver on the outskirts of the airport, on one of the roads they have to exit by. Once you identify, and again, the spotter would identify what self-driving car, what hire car the target has got. Once you're in that car, we know the car, we know the registration. Once that person exits the airport and they're on the open roads, then a bike will pull in behind them or a car will pull in behind them and follow them to their location. Yeah, criminals can use this tactics if they're after high worth targets, etc. But this is a common one in the private investigation world, where a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend suspects their beloved partner is cheating on them, and they want to check out to make sure they're not cheating on them. So, if you're cheating on your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, there's a little tip. There's also a hint, because people hire people like me to follow you and make sure you're being a good little boy or girl. So, as I said, I got books on Amazon on travel security, private security, close protection, etc., etc. If you're connected with me on social media, feel free to send me a message if you got any relevant questions. In the meantime, travel safe, sort out your procedures before you travel, and always make sure you're not being followed, especially if you're being a naughty little boy or girl and cheating on your beloved partner.